Continuing with Abram's story, after he successfully stops his nephew from becoming a slave while refusing the material rewards of that nasty twink Sodom, Abram speaks out to God and asks him, "O Lord, what will thou give me, seeing as I am childless and lack seed? Please seed me, O Lord, or do I have to make one of these randos from my house my heir?" And God's like, "Don't worry, a rando will not be your heir." And then he verbatim says, "He that shall come forth out of thine own bowels will be thy heir." You gonna shit him out? You're never walking again after that one. God brings Abram outside and says, "Look at the stars, and if you can count them all, that's how many kids you'll have." I feel like that's too many. Obviously he means generationally, but also what if Abram can't count them all? If he gives up after 12, is his bloodline gonna die off? I don't think they even invented math yet. God says, "Number the stars," and Abram's like, "I ran out of fingers." This is a generation that measured distance in forearms, so I don't have high hopes. This is a tangent, but when did people start capitalizing God's pronouns no matter what? Because they don't do that in the King James Bible. If you see the word he or him referring to God, it's not capitalized. When did that become a rule? They just decided God deserved super pronouns that tower above all other pronouns? Imagine if God was trans, how powerful those pronouns would be. Anyway. Abram asks God how he'll know when he actually for realsies inherits the land that's been promised to him for the last few decades, and God's like, "I need a heifer, a she-goat, a ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. The heifer, she-goat, and ram must be 3 years old." God likes them young. The more life they have to give, the more of a sacrifice it is. He's twisted like that. Why the ingredients are so randomly particular is anyone's guess. Maybe he's trying out new recipes for his cookbook. But so Abram puts these sacrifices on an altar and then sits there waiting for like 12 hours, shooing birds away from the carcasses until he falls asleep at sundown, at which point it says a great darkness befalls him. It then refers to the darkness as he, as if it's God, saying that he's telling Abram that the first 400 years of Abram's seed will be strangers in a foreign land and serve it like slaves, and then after that they'll be judged, and then they can start being prosperous and whatnot. It feels like a rug pull, like satanic trickery, for God to have been promising Abram all this good stuff from the jump as the basis to have undertaken this humongous mission he's been on for years of like, yeah, you'll have so many kids, and you'll be a father of nations, and you'll be so famous, to then now have this addendum of, but for the first 400 years it's gonna suck for all of them. It's literally the robot chicken meme of, "I have altered the deal. Pray I do not alter it further." Was this like a punishment for falling asleep? Did the crows ruin the pristine sacrifices he made? Is God appearing as a mass of darkness, or is the Bible just being really flowery about what nighttime is? Another tangent real quick. I've heard people reference Bible stories recently in media or in person that I've now been covering and learning about myself from the source, and people keep adding flourishes to the interpretation, and I'm like, okay, the passage never says that. Now, if some things get referenced again later and I just haven't gotten to it, fine. I accept that possibility. Specifically, I heard someone say recently that Cain killed Abel with a rock, but the part of that in Genesis never mentions the weapon. It just says Cain rose up and slew Abel. Could have been a rock, a knife, an open-toed sandal, an unusually sharp banana. It never says. If it says so later, I'll eat my words on that front. Feel free to let me know the passage where that is illuminated. The version of the Bible probably also matters, but otherwise I also feel like some people will give me their takes on the reasoning or context for certain things happening, and it just sounds like you're making it up because those details will not be in the passage at all. It's like how literature clubs and high school language arts teachers will discuss a book and be like, wow, the author's use of the color red in this section is a symbol of this character's untempered rage and blind hatred of what he doesn't understand. And then the author will get wind of that and go, actually, I just like red, so I wanted the chair to be red. Like, how much of the accepted literal and philosophical interpretations of the Bible are just theologians putting their own spin on things, regardless of intention? Because the Bible's very unclear about a lot of shit, and it does not enjoy giving background information. A time capsule of linguistically stinted exposition and incomplete framework. But how could it not be? It was written in a different era for the people of that era. They couldn't be like, let's make sure this is digestible for the TikTok generation. But so just to say that it's probably inevitable that some stuff in the Bible is mischaracterized en masse, but what are you gonna do? Abram's deal isn't sounding so enticing anymore. What do you mean my kids will be fruitful, but only after my great-great-great-great-grandchildren are done being serfs? But after this revelation, it seems like God finally does give Abram the land, at least, establishing a covenant with him like Dark Souls. And it's a pretty spot-on mirror given how many animal body parts Abram's going to be offering to deepen his allegiance. I can tell you the cooperation with Abram and his son is going to be anything but jolly, but that remains a foreshadow. First, he has to be conceived. Enter Sarai, Abram's wife, who is fed up with being barren, so she tells Abram to have sex with their maid and use her as a surrogate, which Abram displays no hesitation in agreeing to. The passage reads that he went in unto her. You think girls back then are talking to their friends like, so how did it go with Abram last night? Oh, he went in unto me. Thy seed was everywhere. But beyond being a seed farm, the maid actually becomes his second wife, and the family becomes the first ever documented polygamists. It goes immediately terribly. The maid, Hagar, horrible name for a woman, becomes pregnant and starts to despise Sarai, probably for the fact that she'd be giving her child over to her. You hear about that in surrogacy sometimes, something I still can't believe any woman would ever willingly do. Pregnancy is already ass, but at least it comes with the arguable benefit of keeping your kid afterwards. So Sarai complains to Abram saying, "My wrong be upon thee," which apparently means my idea was your fault. Logic that men in relationships have had to grapple with since time began. She's like, my maid hates me now, and it's your fault that I told you to sleep with her. And Abram, saint that he is, goes, whoa, bitch, she's your maid, just abuse her or something. In Bible speak, he says, do to her as it pleaseth thee, but I don't think there's any confusion over what that means, especially since Sarai immediately goes and starts mistreating her. It's not like Abram saw that and went, what the hell are you doing? I meant be nice. So upon being dealt hardly with, as the Bible puts it, Hagar ran away from Sarai and fled into the wilderness, where an angel found her, asking where did she come from, where did she go? And when Hagar explained to the angel that she was mistreated by her mistress while carrying her child, the angel was like, you better get right the hell back there and submit to her. Also, I have decided that your baby's name is Ishmael, because you definitely asked for my opinion. I used to think Hagar was getting the shaft here, but she did start it by being resentful of Sarai, even knowing what she was getting into, but also, wait a second, she's the maid. She probably didn't even have a choice. Oh no, they might have forced this whole thing on her. This is actually horrible. Still, she at least wanted to keep the kid, or maybe she just didn't want it in Sarai and Abram's clutches for what they did. And now here's an angel of the Lord coming down and pointing his finger back to her captivity and punishment like, silly Hagar, well, where did you think you could possibly go? He does promise her a million kids, like with Abram. That's God's default jackpot, apparently. Do my bidding, and I will give you dozens of painful pregnancies with no modern medicine, and you will have way too many mouths to feed, and half of them will starve, but at least they were born, so says the Lord. The angel also says that Hagar's firstborn, Ishmael, will be a wild man whose hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him. So like a berserk psycho everyone hates? Cool, thank you for the blessing. Is this like a curse, or just telling the future? I know humans have free will to be who they want to be, but they actually don't, as far as like genetics and traits are concerned. And who would be responsible for these genetics and traits if not God? So it feels like heaven's representatives just decide to curse people's unborn children whenever they want. Like, what's the motive? Alright, we have 3 good guys coming in soon. Archangel Michael, yes, my lord? Go down and tell that maid her son's gonna suck ass. We need to stir the pot a bit or it'll get boring. So Hagar goes back and gives birth to Ishmael, and Abram is 46 years old at this time. The Bible now fast forwards 43 years when Abram is 99, and God's like, Abram, I am the Almighty God, walk before me and be thou perfect. This is funny for several reasons, depending on how you interpret certain things. Firstly, God feels the need to introduce himself in case Abram forgot who he was, though obviously the real reason to say that is to reestablish dominance and power, the way a king would be like, I am your king, bow to me at once. Using the word almighty to describe yourself out loud is also amusing. It's like something Thor would say in a Marvel movie. Then you have the phrase, be thou perfect. God's like, hey, can you be flawless for a sec? I'm talking to you. You could also draw a connection between God's definition of perfect and the prostration that Abram immediately does after he says that, falling on his face, as the Bible puts it, like he slipped on a banana peel. But so the implication that to be perfect means to debase yourself to your lowest form in the presence of that which demands your ultimate worship. It makes me wonder if God ever talks to people who are standing upright. Like, the contrition, the subservience seems so central to religious etiquette. Like, don't you dare ever forget your place. Can you be perfect if you're not bowing before God? Does his ideal for you require complete and total obedience and submission? Maybe I'll have a clearer picture when I'm further than page 7. Fucking hell, dude. Anyway, this is where the big ask comes in, but before that, God's like, you know what, I messed up in the character creation menu. I have decided to rename you Abraham to represent that he is the father of nations, which is like how in Skyrim, if you do enough missions for the Stormcloaks, the Jarl is like, I will now call you Stormblade for the many Imperials you have put to the sword. Abraham isn't as cool as Stormblade, but I guess it's something. Imagine being renamed on the spot. I'd be like, that's neat, but I'm not gonna go change my passport. But God starts buttering up Abraham with all these new promises. I will give you the land of Canaan, where you dwelt as a stranger. You now own that. Your seed will be even more fruitful than the last time I said it would be fruitful. It'll be super extra fruitful. Your sperm will really level up out here. Like, you'll give birth to kings, and they'll make new nations because of the sheer strength of your balls. You will have the most treasured and bountiful sack in human history. But, I'm gonna need that foreskin. Abraham's like, I think you might need Abram's foreskin, but I'm actually Abraham now. Totally different guy, totally different foreskin. God's like, you will circumcise yourself, and everyone in your house, and everyone in the future when they turn 8 days old. Keep in mind there are hundreds of people in Abraham's house. Those 300 some odd soldiers he led into battle to rescue his nephew that one time, there's about to be a mass grave of military-grade foreskins, and Abraham's about to earn a new name, the Jewish guillotine. There's even a stipulation that slaves bought by Abraham or his ilk must be circumcised as well. Nice little cherry on top of the slavery sundae if you didn't think it was bad enough. Full disclosure, I am circumcised, and I like how it looks compared to the alternative, but I did that at birth. I don't have to remember what it was like as an adult. That sounds horrendous. It's just neater. It doesn't have that extra hood on it where it looks like they left some of the packaging on. Circumcision makes it look like a nice little ice cream cone. I mean, big ice cream cone. God calls it a token of the covenant. If it's a token, does that mean he keeps them? You build a nice altar and put the foreskins next to the animal sacrifices. Quite a smorgasbord for the Lord, huh? Well, that's gonna do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can like, share, and subscribe. Watch all my other videos with a death grip on your foreskin, and I'll see you guys next time.